That morning, I dropped my grandkids at school. By the time I came home, $15 million worth of property papers, everything I'd saved for their future, was gone. Just gone. Voice trembles, pause. And when I found out who took it, my knees gave out. Before I begin, if you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. And please, if this story reaches your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Because stories like this, they vanish when no one listens. Beat, tone shifts to storytelling voice. It started like any other Thursday. The sun was barely up, and the light came through the kitchen window like melted honey. My truck smelled of coffee, sawdust, and old leather. The smell of a man who's worked his whole life and doesn't apologize for it. My grandkids, Lily and Noah, were in the back seat, arguing about who got to play their favorite song on the drive. "Grandpa, she picked yesterday," Noah said, pointing an accusing finger. Lily rolled her eyes. "No, I didn't. You just don't like my songs." I chuckled, turning down the radio. "You two fight like old married folks. Someday you'll thank your grandpa for giving you rides like this." They laughed, not knowing peace is something you only appreciate when it's gone. We reached the school, red brick building, flag fluttering, kids running everywhere. I parked, leaned back, and for a moment I just watched them. They didn't see me as an old man. To them, I was still strong, reliable, the guy who made pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. "Study hard," I called as they slammed the doors. "Love."
"You, Grandpa!" Lily shouted, already halfway across the parking lot. Those 3 words hit like sunlight on a cold day. I didn't know they'd be the last peaceful ones I'd hear for a long while. The drive home took 15 minutes, but my mind wandered 40 years back. I remembered the long nights, the calloused hands, the paychecks that barely covered bills. That land, those 4 parcels I bought one by one, were my legacy. Each plot was a chapter of my life, the first one bought with savings from overtime, the second after selling my truck, the third on my wife Martha's birthday because she said, "Walter, one day the kids will need this more than we need a new car." She was right, like she always was. When she passed 6 years ago, I promised her those properties would go to our grandkids, not to be sold, not to be wasted, but to secure their future. That promise was why I still woke up every morning with weird purpose. When I got home, everything looked exactly the same, the porch light still humming, the smell of rain in the air, Martha's wind chimes singing softly by the door. Nothing looked wrong, but sometimes what's missing doesn't announce itself. It just hides inside the silence. The air felt off, too still, the kind of still that makes your skin prickle. I hung my keys, walked into my study, and stopped. The rug corner was folded over like someone had stepped on it. The safe, that black metal box I kept under my desk, was slightly open. My heart dropped straight through my stomach. I knelt down and pulled the door fully open. Empty. The documents, those crisp folders labeled with each property's deed, gone. $15 million worth of land, the sum total of my life's work, missing in a house that was locked from the inside. I froze. At 70, you don't panic. You just feel cold inside, like the blood in your veins turns to glass. I sat there for minutes that felt like hours. No broken locks, no forced entry, no mess. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. The safe wasn't something you'd find by accident. It was hidden behind a false drawer panel. Only 3 people knew about it: my son Daniel, my daughter Claire, and me. That meant whoever took those papers was someone I trusted with everything I had left.
I called Daniel first. He answered on the second ring, his voice cheerful as always. "Hey, Dad, what's up?" "Hey, did you stop by the house this morning?" "No, why?" My throat tightened. "Nothing, just checking." He paused. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I lied. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't. And he knew it. I could hear the hesitation in his voice before he hung up. I sat back in my chair and looked at the wall behind my desk. Martha's photo hung there, her smile soft, eyes kind, hands folded in the garden she loved. I remembered her last words to me. "Walter, don't let money make you forget who you're doing it for." I hadn't forgotten, but maybe someone else had. Claire, my sweet, stubborn daughter. We hadn't spoken in 6 months, not since she accused me of treating money like a leash. She said I was controlling her life, that I was using my wealth to make her feel small. But she never understood. My control was protection. She married Jason against my better judgment, a smooth-talking financial consultant who always smelled like cologne and trouble. He smiled too much, talked too fast, and looked at my house like it was an asset waiting to be liquidated. I tried to keep the peace for Claire's sake, but deep down I knew that man was counting my money in his head. Last week he stopped by to check on me. He brought a bottle of wine I didn't ask for and a smile I didn't believe in. He said, "You know, Walter, you should let me help you manage those properties." "I could save you a lot on taxes," I told him. "I built those lands with my own hands. I'll pay my own taxes." He laughed it off, but his eyes flicked toward my desk, the one that hid the safe. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now his words kept echoing like nails on metal. That night I barely slept. The clock ticked so loud it sounded like a heartbeat reminding me I was alone. I kept replaying every moment from the past week. Daniel stopping by for coffee, the mailman delivering a package, Jason's visit. Could someone have followed me? Or was this all an inside job? At 2 a.m., I got up and checked the locks again. All secure. It was the silence that kept me awake after that, the kind that presses on your ears until you start hearing your own thoughts too loud. The next morning, I made a list of names on a yellow pad, people who had been in the house this month. The plumber, the gardener, the neighbor who brought pie. Jason, I crossed off everyone except him. Then I noticed something else missing. The small brass key to the safe that usually sat in the drawer under my Bible. Gone. Whoever did this had time. They weren't rushed. They knew where to look. When you're old, you notice things others don't. The faint smell of perfume, the shift in air when a room's been entered. And as I walked around my study, I smelled something sweet, familiar. Lavender. Claire always wore lavender lotion. It lingered on the edge of the desk, a ghost of her touch. I sat back down and ran my hand across the wood grain, feeling each groove like a timeline of my life. That's when my fingers caught something beneath the desk edge. Paper. I crouched and pulled it out, a torn corner of a FedEx envelope. My daughter's handwriting was on it. For a moment I just stared at it, like my eyes could erase what they saw. I knew that handwriting as well as my own. The way her letters leaned right, the soft loops on her C's and L's. There was no mistake. Pause. Soft re-hook. That's when I knew the theft wasn't random. It was personal. And the person who took everything I'd saved was closer than I ever imagined. The moment I saw that torn piece of FedEx envelope, my heart started pounding like it hadn't in years. It wasn't fear. It was betrayal waking up inside me. I turned it over. No address. No full name. just the top left corner with a small loop of a letter that looked like C. Claire. It couldn't be, I told myself. My own daughter? No, maybe she was sending me something. Maybe it was old. Maybe it had just fallen. But that voice in my chest, the one that sounds like Martha when I'm about to lie to myself, kept saying, "You already know the answer, Walter." The next morning, I called Daniel again. "Morning, son," I said. He yawned into the phone. "Hey."
Dad, everything okay? Yeah, just wondering, when's the last time you saw your sister? He paused.
"Claire? Maybe 3-4 weeks ago. Why? She stopped by your place recently?" "Nope." "Why? What's going on?" "Nothing," I said. "Just thinking of her." I could hear him scratching his head through the phone. "You're
Acting weird, Dad? Am I said softly. Maybe I'm just getting old. We hung up, but the knot in my stomach grew tighter. If Daniel didn't know anything, then my suspicion pointed back in one direction. Claire, now you have to
understand something about me. I'm not the yelling type. Never was. I believe in patience, especially when you're hunting the truth. So instead of calling her right away, I decided to do something smarter. I planted a story. I called Jason, her husband, that afternoon. "Hey, son," I said, pretending to sound casual. "I was just sorting through some of my documents and realized I might have misplaced a few insurance papers. You didn't happen to see any of those, did you? Maybe from the last time you were over?" He paused, just a second too long. Then that practiced smoothness came back into his voice. "Oh, no, Walter, not at all. But if you want, I could come by this weekend, help you look for them." There it was again, that tone. The helpful tone of a man who's already counted. "Your money? That's kind of you," I said. "But I'll manage." He laughed lightly. "You sure? I know you've got a lot of files there. I could bring my laptop, organize them for you." That was his mistake. He wanted access again. He wanted to make sure the papers were still gone. I smiled into the receiver. "Tell you what, Jason, let's see how busy I am this weekend. I'll let you know." "All right," he said, his voice smooth but tight now. "Sounds good, Walter." I sat there after hanging up, staring at the phone, listening to the silence fill the house again. You can tell a lot about people by how they react to small lies. Jason's pause told me he wasn't innocent. But I still couldn't be sure if Claire knew, or if she was just caught in the middle. That night, I found myself sitting in the living room, flipping through old photo albums. One of Claire at 10, grinning with a missing front tooth, holding a stray kitten she'd found in our backyard. One of her graduation day, me and Martha standing beside her, proud as the sun, and one on her wedding day. I remembered how my hand shook when I signed that check for her honeymoon, Jason standing beside her, wearing that same slick grin. "Dad," she had said that night, "you worry too much." And I'd said, "It's not worry, sweetheart. It's instinct. I should have trusted that instinct." The next day, I decided to check something. I went to the study again and looked at the spot where the FedEx piece had fallen. A faint scuff mark on the wood, like someone had placed a box there recently. So I checked the security camera. Now don't laugh. I'm old, but I'm not stupid. I have one little camera by the porch pointed toward the driveway. It doesn't show much, but sometimes it catches cars pulling up. I scrolled through the last few days. Nothing unusual. But then, 2 mornings earlier, at 6:42 a.m., I saw it. A silver SUV pulling into the driveway. Claire's car. She got out wearing a hoodie, hair tied back, looking nervous. She glanced around, then walked to the front door. The camera didn't show inside, but 10 minutes later, she came back out with a small envelope in her hand. She looked down at it, hesitated, then tore something, a piece fluttered away in the wind before she drove off. My breath caught in my throat. It was the torn corner I'd found under the rug. Pause, voice trembles slightly. When I tell you that moment hurt, I mean it physically hurt. You raise your kids to be good, honest, kind. You give them everything you can. And one day you realize the same love you built your life around became the thing that betrayed you. I sat there for nearly an hour, staring at that frozen frame on the screen. My daughter, my little girl, stealing from me. But the thing is, I couldn't hate her. I just wanted to understand why I called her that evening. She answered on the second ring, her voice cautious. "Dad, everything okay?" "Yeah, I," said softly. "Just wanted to hear your voice." She exhaled. "That's sweet."
"It's been a while, I know." I hesitated. "You were around here the other morning, weren't you?" Silence. Then too quickly. "What? No, of course not. Why would I?" I cut her off gently. "Honey, if you needed something, you could have told me. I'm not mad," her voice cracked. "Dad, I don't know what you're talking about."
And right then, I knew she was lying. Because when people lie, they get formal. And my daughter hadn't called me Dad in that stiff tone since she was a teenager. After we hung up, I sat there, staring at the dark window. Her reflection flickered in my mind like a ghost, guilt sitting right behind her eyes. I didn't need proof anymore, but I wanted to hear it from her. I wanted her to face me. That night, I wrote something down in my notebook, a sentence that had kept me alive all my years in business and in life. Never let emotion outrun your plan. So I made a plan. The next day, I went to the county records office, asked for access to recent title inquiries for my properties. The clerk looked confused but pulled the file anyway. And there it was, my name, Walter Green, with a transfer request form logged just 3 days ago. The applicant listed, Jason and Claire Benton, my daughter, and her husband. I felt the floor tilt under me. They were trying to transfer my land before I even knew it was gone. I thanked the clerk, walked out calmly, but inside my hands were shaking. Back home, I poured myself a whiskey I hadn't touched since Martha passed. One sip burned enough to remind me I was still alive. And I thought of all the times Claire had come to me for help. When she was broke. When she needed money for her first house. When Jason lost his job. I'd given without question. Because that's what love does.
It gives until it hurts. But now, I realized, I hadn't been helping her grow. I'd been teaching her how to take. That evening I called Daniel again. "Son," I said, "do me a favor. Don't tell your sister I called. But if she reaches out to you, let me know." He hesitated. "Dad, what's going on?" I swallowed hard. "I'll tell you soon." He didn't push.
Daniel's a good man that way. He knows when not to ask. After I hung up, I went to my bedroom, took out an old wooden box Martha had left me. Inside were her letters, her wedding ring, and a small key. She'd given it to me years ago, saying, "One day, this might unlock something important." I never asked what she meant, but that night I found out. The key fit perfectly into the small side drawer of my desk, a drawer I hadn't opened in a decade. Inside was an envelope labeled, "In case of family trouble." I opened it and found copies, duplicate deeds, notarized and sealed, all still in my name. Martha had known. She'd known something like this could happen. Pause, rehook, for next part. That night, I realized something. They hadn't stolen my land. They'd stolen my peace. and I was going to take it back without shouting, without fighting, just the way Martha taught me, quietly, smartly, and completely. Because love might make you forgive, but betrayal makes you remember. I didn't sleep that night. The house felt heavier than ever, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Every creak in the floor sounded like a memory I didn't want to remember. I sat in my armchair watching the old grandfather clock tick away. Each sound was a reminder. Time doesn't stop, not even for heartbreak. Martha's letter sat on my lap, her neat handwriting still steady after all these years. I ran my fingers across the words. In case of family trouble, it broke something inside me to realize that she had seen what I couldn't. She had always been the quiet visionary between us. I was the builder. She was the soul. Now it was my turn to do what she would have done, not with anger, but with wisdom. Pause softly. The next morning, I made a pot of coffee and sat down with the duplicate deeds, 4 properties, all legally protected under
my name, quietly safeguarded by Martha's foresight. For the first time in days, I smiled, not out of happiness, but out of clarity. You see, revenge doesn't always come from rage.
Sometimes it's born out of love, the kind that refuses to die quietly. At 10 a.m. I called my lawyer, Mr. Franklin, an old friend from my construction days. He'd handled my estate planning for years, a man of few words but strong ethics. "Morning, Walter," he said, his voice gravelly as ever. "What brings you to me this early?" "Franklin," I said, "I need to make some quiet updates. No one's to know. Especially not my daughter or her husband." He paused. "Trouble?" I exhaled. "You could call it that. Let's just say I found out who my real family is." He didn't ask for details. He didn't need to. "Come in tomorrow morning," he said. "We'll make it right." That day, I walked through the house like a stranger in a museum. Every photo
on the wall had a story. Birthdays, first steps, holidays.
Now they felt like frozen echoes of a life that used to make sense. On Martha's picture frame, I whispered, "They almost took everything, love, but not anymore." Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I dressed up, pressed shirt, combed hair, old wristwatch on. Because if you're going to fight for your family's future, you should look like you still belong in the game. The next morning, I met Franklin at his downtown office. The smell of paper and coffee took me back decades, back when trust still meant something. He spread the duplicate deeds across his mahogany desk and raised an eyebrow. "You kept copies? Smart man." "Not me," I said softly. "Martha did," he nodded. "Smart woman." We spent the next hour drafting legal safeguards. I re-registered all properties under a new family trust, one that bypassed both Claire and Jason completely. The beneficiaries, Lily and Noah, my grandchildren, not their parents. Franklin looked at me after typing the final clause. "You sure about this, Walter? It'll cause a storm when they find out." I leaned back. "Let it storm. Sometimes peace
needs thunder first," he smiled faintly. "You always had a way with words." "No," I said. "Just a way with lessons." When I came home that evening, the sunset was burning low, painting the living room in gold.
I sat there in the quiet, listening to the wind through the trees, and for the first time in a week, I felt something close to peace. But peace doesn't last long when you live among betrayal. At 7:15 that evening, my phone buzzed. Claire. Her voice was calm at first, careful. "Dad, I've been meaning to call you." I took a breath. "Is that right?" "Yeah. I wanted to ask if everything's okay. You sounded off the other day. I smiled into the phone. I'm fine, just doing some estate work. There was a pause, a long, telling pause. Estate work? She repeated, her tone shifting slightly. Yeah, I said, slow and casual. Making sure everything's in order, for the grandkids. Another pause. Then a soft exhale. That's good, Dad. They'll appreciate that. She hung up soon after, but I could hear the unease in her voice. She knew. Somehow, she knew I was moving pieces she thought she already owned. The next day, I got a knock on the door. When I opened it, there stood Jason, looking polished as ever, holding a coffee cup like he was dropping by for a chat. Walter, he said, smiling too wide. Mind if I come in? I nodded slowly. Sure, why not? He stepped in, glancing around like a man taking inventory. Nice day, he said. Claire's been worried about you. She said you sounded strange. I motioned toward a chair. Strange? No, just busy. Busy with what? I looked him dead in the eye. Family matters. He laughed awkwardly. Well, that's good. Speaking of family, I wanted to check if you've had time to look at those papers we talked about, the ones about your properties. I sipped my coffee slowly. You mean the ones you already looked at? His smile faltered. What do you mean? Jason, I said softly, leaning forward. If you're going to steal from a man, at least be smart enough not to show up at his door the next day. His face changed instantly. The fake politeness drained out, replaced by something cold and sharp. Walter, I think there's been a misunderstanding. There's only one misunderstanding, I said. You thought I was stupid. He stood up. I think I should go. Good idea, I said. And Jason? Tell Claire I said hi. He froze for half a second, then walked out. But not before I saw it. That flicker of guilt in his eyes, its gentle tone, introspective. After he left, I sat down again, but this time I didn't feel broken. I felt something else, power, quiet, patient power. You see, age doesn't make you weak, it makes you invisible. And sometimes invisibility is the best disguise for justice. 2 days later, Franklin called me. The new trust is finalized, he said. All assets secured. They can't touch a cent without your consent. I exhaled. Thank you. He paused. What do you want me to do about the transfer request they filed? I smiled. Let it go through, just long enough for them to think they've won. Then deny it at the last stage. I want them to believe their lie worked before it doesn't. Franklin chuckled. You've still got that old builder's cunning. Old habits, I said, and good teachers. That night, I sat on the porch under the stars, Martha's blanket draped over my knees. The air was cool, the crickets loud, and for a brief, peaceful moment, I imagined her sitting beside me. You did good, I whispered to the night. You saved us both. The wind brushed my cheek, soft and warm. Maybe it was just air. Or maybe it was her. Pause. Rehook for next part. But I wasn't done yet. Because 2 days later, I got another visit, this time from Claire. Her eyes red, her hands trembling, holding a stack of papers she shouldn't have had, and that's when I realized the story wasn't about money anymore. It was about forgiveness, and the one thing betrayal never kills, hope. It was Sunday morning when I heard the knock. 3 soft taps. Hesitant, familiar. I opened the door and saw her. Claire. She stood there, eyes red, clutching a stack of papers. Her hands shook the way mine did when I buried her mother. "Dad," she whispered, "we need to talk." For a moment, I said nothing, just looked at her, my little girl who used to climb on my shoulders, who now stood before me like a stranger caught in her own storm. "Come in," I said quietly. She stepped. Inside, her perfume, lavender, still the same scent I'd smelled on my desk that morning the papers vanished. She sat on the couch trembling. I could tell she'd been crying for hours. "Dad," she began, voice shaky. "I know you know." I didn't move. "Know what, Claire?" She wiped her eyes. "About the papers, about Jason, about everything." Her words hung heavy in the air. "I found out last night," she said. "Jason had been planning it for weeks. He told me it was just temporary, that we'd move the deeds under our name to protect them in case you passed."
I believed him, Dad. I really believed him. She broke down, tears falling fast. I thought he was doing it for the kids, but when I saw your name erased on those documents, I realized what he really wanted. It wasn't protection. It was
"Control." She looked up at me, eyes wet, desperate. "I didn't mean for it to happen this way. I swear I didn't." I sat there, letting her words wash over me like cold rain. For days, I'd imagined anger. But when the truth came out, all
I felt was grief. Grief for the girl who used to hug my leg when she was scared. I leaned forward, my voice soft.
"Claire, I know you didn't plan it, but you let it happen." She nodded through tears. "I did, and I'll never forgive myself for that." "Forgiving yourself isn't your job," I said quietly. "It's mine." Her eyes widened.
"Dad, how can you forgive me after what I did?" I looked at her, really looked, saw her fear, her shame, her lostness.
And I saw Martha in her face. The same eyes, the same trembling lip when she'd done wrong as a girl. "You're my daughter," I said. "And daughters make mistakes, but it's my job to make sure those mistakes don't destroy you," she cried harder, covering her face. "I wanted to fix it before you found out. I tried to stop him, but he threatened to take the kids and disappear. He said he'd make you look senile, said you wouldn't survive the court battle." Her words sliced deeper than any theft ever could. They weren't stealing just my land. They were trying to steal my dignity. But they'd failed, because what Jason didn't know was that I'd already built my fortress long before he came into our lives. I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out an envelope, the one Franklin had prepared. "This," I said, handing it to her, "is the new trust." She looked confused. "Trust?" "Yes," I said. "All properties are now under the Green Family Legacy Trust. You're not listed on it. Jason isn't either." Her face dropped. "Then who?" "Lily and Noah," I said. "When they turn 21, they'll inherit everything. Until then, I'll manage it." She stared at the envelope, then at me. "So, you still kept it for them?" "For them," I said. "Not for us." Her tears came again, quieter this time. "Dad, I don't deserve your kindness," I smiled sadly. "You're right. But I'm not doing it out of kindness. I'm doing it because I made a promise to your mother." I stood, walked to the window, and looked outside. The sun was breaking through the grey clouds, washing the house in gold. "Your mother always said," I continued softly, "love them even when they're wrong, because that's when they need it most." Claire whispered, "I miss her." "I know," I said. "She'd have known what to say to you right now." She shook her head. "No, she'd be disappointed." I turned back to her. "She'd be proud that you came home." Pause. Voice softens for emotional pacing. We sat there in silence for a long time. The kind of silence that doesn't demand words. Finally, she said, "What about Jason?" I smiled faintly. "He'd get what he deserves," quietly. And he did. That same week, Franklin filed a notice with the county registrar, flagging Jason's fraudulent transfer attempt. Within days, the authorities froze his access to any of my assets. Jason tried calling me 3 times. I didn't pick up. He even showed up once, banging on my door like a salesman desperate for one last deal. I didn't open. Some doors, once closed, should stay that way. 2 weeks later, Claire filed for separation. She moved in temporarily with a friend and started counseling. We talked every few days. It wasn't easy, but forgiveness never is. She brought Lily and
Noah over one weekend. They ran into my arms like nothing had ever happened. "Grandpa, guess what?" Lily said, her eyes bright. "Mom said we might live here for a while." I smiled, pretending not to choke up. "Well, you tell your mom."
"I've got pancakes waiting." They cheered and ran toward the kitchen. I stood behind them, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. That night, after the kids went to bed, Claire came into my study. "I found something," she said softly. She held out an old, yellowed envelope. I frowned. "Where'd
"You get that?" "In Mom's old jewelry box," she said. "It's addressed to you, from her." I opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a single page in Martha's handwriting. "Walter, if you're reading this, it means you faced a test you didn't see coming. Don't let anger be your answer. Let love be your legacy." My eyes blurred before I could finish.
Claire leaned against me and started crying again. We sat there, father and daughter, holding each other for the first time in years. No words, no apologies. Just love finding its way back home. Pause softly. Rehook to viewer. If you're still here with me, my friend, I want you to remember this. Betrayal hurts. It breaks you in places you didn't know could break. But forgiveness? Forgiveness rebuilds you from the inside out. I didn't get back my stolen peace overnight, but I got something better. The truth. And the truth gave me freedom. A few months later, I drove out to the edge of my land. The sun was setting low, casting long shadows over the fields. I placed Martha's letter in a small box, buried it. Under the oak tree she loved, and I whispered, "We kept our promise, love. The kids are safe." Then I sat down under that tree, watching the light fade, knowing that even when people you love betray you, if you stand firm in who you are, you'll never lose everything. Because money can vanish, trust can break, but love once, rooted deep, grows back stronger. Voice softens, final subscribe moment. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Elderly True Stories, because sometimes all we need is a reminder that love, no matter how broken, still has the power to heal. And as long as you're here listening, I'll be here too, telling the stories that remind us we're never alone. Good night, my friends.